Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from Simple123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for the U.S. futures, Forex futures for the week of April 4th to April 9th. Hope everybody is doing well and are safe. Let's start off with the Australian dollar and see how it's looking coming up into this week. On the monthly time frame, I'm on the monthly time frame, and we have set up a pin bar. So it looks like we're going to have a little bit of an advance going into this week, more than likely. So let's make sure. We'll drop down to the weekly time frame. Take a look at this. Okay, so on the weekly time frame, yes, we seem to have come down to a previous support area, and it's now possible that we could get a little bit of a bounce back up into this level. So what I'm looking for is a head and shoulders formation setting up. That's totally possible before we get a move back to the downside. So something like that. So on dropping down to the daily, we look at it bar by bar now. Okay, so we do indeed have a left shoulder, and there's the right shoulder, depending, of course, which angle you're looking at it from. And here's the neckline. So we came down to the neckline, and now it looks like we're going to bounce back up towards this area before we turn back around again. So we're going to get that other shoulder. Looks like this is what's setting up for this week. So a move up for the Australian dollar. So strengthen the Australian dollar, and if that's so, that would mean weakness in the US dollar. So we'll see how that plays out with the euro and the GBP and the New Zealand. If we get strength in those, then we're going to be getting weakness in the US dollar. All right, so let's take a look at Bitcoin next. We'll go to Bitcoin on the monthly. Bitcoin is way up there. It's basically vertical, 90-degree up, and on the weekly, still shooting straight up in the air. On the daily, now we're starting to see a little bit of separation. So what I'm seeing overall is a move that tried to break through the previous highs, but it could not last week. I was expecting that move through, but it did not. So we got a little bit of a rejection. And now what's going to happen this week? We're on the daily here. So it looks like this rejection might be short-lived, and we could push one more time through that to create that new high and a euphoria move. So that's a possibility. I'm going to drop down a little lower. I'm going to go down to the 4-hour on this one just to kind of take a closer look. Okay, so now what I'm seeing, yes, we've got this pullback, and it is more than likely very close to an area where we might be done this pullback. We could, of course, come even lower. We could come down to even down to this area. So if we do that, that would be I would expect to move back up by the end of the week. So short term, a little bit of weakness in Bitcoin, but we could see a push back up later on in the week. Crude oil. Go to the monthly on crude oil. So crude oil has had quite the move. Now we had a little bit of rejection because we were right at resistance. Okay, so that's on the monthly. Dropping to the weekly time frame. You can see that we had a little bit of a pullback. We're right again, still right in that resistance area, and we could see further moves to the upside possible. So right now we've had a move down. I'm kind of seeing a move back down one more time. So a little bit of weakness. It looks like we're going to be getting in crude oil before we continue the march to the upside. So let me just go to the 4-hour on this one. And yeah, I can see that this move is just a choppy affair in here, and we're probably going to get a further drop to the downside. If I'm wrong, then we're gonna break these highs and continue to the upside. But I don't think that's going to happen. If it does, it's a fake out, and I think we'll be moving back down. Okay, so weakness in oil overall for the week. Let's take a look at the Canadian dollar. On the monthly, we've we've come right into previous resistance on the monthly. So the expected move now would be back to the downside. And we had that move down on the weekly, on the daily. We're still moving down. This little move up might be all over, and we're heading to the downside continuation. So it looks like that's what's setting up further weakness in the Canadian dollar going into this week. So if that's the case, then that's also telling us that Aussie is strong, Canadian dollar is weak, would mean a weak US dollar as well. So that's two confirmations for a weak US dollar. So let's see how the US dollar looks on the monthly. Okay, monthly time frame, quite the drop. We reached right down into previous support area, and we bounced. Are we good to go and we're going to continue? I don't think so. I think that this is a move to the upside that's going to be turning back to the downside. Let's go a little closer on the weekly and take a look at that. And so again, what I'm seeing, this move down is now going to be pointing to a move back down this way. So in the short term, and that's this week, on the daily time frame, we have pushed up quite a bit, and we could be done at this point and ready to turn back around. Now, it is possible we could push one more time to the upside. It is definitely possible we could break that high, but if it does, there's going to be another fake out move, and we're still going to be heading back down. So short term right now, it's in a kind of a neutral state. It's not either down or up at this point. It's in a neutral state. Okay, but I see further weakness for the US dollar coming out this week. Okay, euro. So the euro would point to strength if we're correct. So euro is going to be the opposite. So euro is heading down, and so I would expect the euro to turn around. This is on the daily right now. So euro right now is pointing to the downside, and I would expect perhaps one more move to the downside before we turn around and continue back up. So that's a total possibility, just doing the opposite of what the US dollar is doing. Looking at this on the weekly, you can see we've been in quite the move down, but we're right coming down into a support area. So we could be done, like I say, one more move and we could be done. Okay, so a little bit of weakness in the US dollar, but it's in a neutral state as well. Okay, let's take a look at the Swiss franc on the monthly. Swiss franc, quite the move up, but quite the move down. So this move down, are we done? Let's take a closer look. Still looks like we have more downside to come, and indeed, we're still heading down. So from this point here, we still have moves down. We could get a little bit of a bounce, but it'll be short-lived, and we'll continue to the downside for Swiss franc. So weakness in the Swiss. Gold. Gold, quite the drop so far, and are we done at this point is another question. Maybe. So on, let's go to the weekly. So it looks like it's trying very hard to turn around here because again we're at a support, and it's looking like it wants to turn, but does it have enough oomph to turn at this point is the key question. Maybe not. It's not looking too good. I think it's still more weakness to come. So I would be careful going long on gold at this point in time. So it's in a bit of a neutral state at this point, but we could see further weakness as time goes on during this week. Japanese yen. Japanese yen, this one has been super weak, as you can see on the monthly, and still heading down, but we're getting very close into a previous support area. So we could be basically done at this point on this move down, getting very close to that point where we could be almost done. So you can see the candles are getting smaller and smaller as we move down. So it looks like we're almost down at the bottom, but still a little bit of weakness left in Japanese yen going into this week. Let's take a look at the New Zealand dollar. On the monthly, it too has had quite the run to the upside, but it also faced the resistance and now is pushing back to the downside. So dropping to weekly time frame, and we're heading to the downside. Looks like we have quite a ways to go with New Zealand dollar. So we're in a lull state right now, but I think we'll continue down as the week continues. So daily time frame, we're heading down, and I think, like I say, I think we'll continue to the downside for the remainder of the week. So a weak New Zealand dollar. Mexican peso. It had quite the move to the upside in the last few months, but has taken a turn to the downside. It's trying again to push back though. So on the weekly, it's trying very hard now to push back out, and this is totally a possible move that can take us back up to resistance in this area. So dropping down to the daily time frame, what we're going to see here is this is a totally potential a big move to the upside. So it is we're at a critical point at in this area. So if we could of course see a pullback first before we get that move. So that's totally possible, a pullback before we get that move. So we have to be careful here. Could be some weakness in the Mexican peso going into this week before it turns. So we're at like I say, at a critical junction of support resistance. So if you're playing the Mexican peso, be careful. Okay, we're looking at the British pound on the monthly. Has been super strong, but now it's taken a turn back to the downside. So you can see it taking a little bit of a breather. And are we done? Perhaps. We could be getting a little bit of a bounce back to the upside. We came back down into a previous support resistance area, and now we could see a move back to the upside, although it might be just short-lived and we'll have one more push back down. So a little bit of strength in the British pound, which would bode well with a weak US dollar. Okay. All right, so that's British pound. Let's take a look at silver. Hi-oh, silver. Okay, silver. It's pushing back down as well. So it's weak right now. Still looking very weak on the weekly. Daily, we're pushing to the downside still. So weakness in silver, weakness in gold for the week. Now let's take a look at the Russell 2000. This is the US 2000. On the monthly, we've been straight up in the air. On the weekly, still pushing, trying to make new highs every week here. It just seems like this is a non-stop middle class or mid cap section. So liken this for more strength and push to new highs for the week. So it looks like that's what's going to be taking place as we go into this week. More strength in the US 2000, in the US in the Dow, US 30, same type of thing. We've broken into new highs. We just broke through new highs, and it looks like that's going to continue into this week as well. Okay, for the US 500, same type of story. We broke the new highs on Friday, and Friday and Thursday and Wednesday we broke to even more highs, and so I would expect a continuation more than likely going into this week. Looking at the technology sector, similar story. We broke to new highs again, and I would look for continued moves to the upside for the U.S. technology sector as well. All right, so that's a look at what's setting up for all the futures. So keep your eye on US dollar if you're playing those major pairs. Whatever the US dollar does is going to be the catalyst for those moves. So profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. We're done now. Thank you.